Showtime. Welcome to the show. I'm Brent Holland from Night Fright. Thank you so much, one and all, for joining us. You know, on the way into the studio tonight, I have to drive by a lake. There's mist coming up off that lake. It's downright nasty out there, and I'll tell you why. The leaves have fallen now in the north here in Sudbury. The wind's blown. It's Halloween time. We're in October. This is it, folks. It's creepy. It's dark. It's scary out there. But tonight on the way in, the sky was clear, crystal clear. You could see every star in the sky. Now, I couldn't help but wonder, what lies beyond the stars? What is in our universe? Are we the only ones that are here? Are we the only ones with intelligent life? And God, I hope not. Trust me on that one, folks. Have we been visited? And if so, why? Tonight, with our guest, Jim Moroney, we're going to look at some of those answers. We're going to look at the questions I just posed, and we're going to look at the answers because he has a new book out called The Extraterrestrial Answer Book. Now, how great is that? All the questions you ever wanted the answers to about extraterrestrials are in this book. Easy way to get it, as always, www.nightfrightshow.com. Click on the book cover. We'll take you right to a place where you can pick the book up online from the comfort of your own home. Now, home. If you're lucky enough to be indoors tonight, settle in, settle back. Put your feet up, get in your comfy chair, turn the lights down real low. Get the coffee going because you don't want to miss this journey we're about to take together. If you're in your car, just ease up ever so slightly on that gas pedal and listen in. Tonight, we're going into the unknown with Jim Moroney and the Extraterrestrial Answer Book right now on Night Fright. Strap in and hang on. Here we go.
There is a time to question. There is a time for answers. There is a time to challenge. There is a time to speculate. There is a time for change. There is a time for truth. The time is now. Welcome to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio. And now your host, Brent Holland.
Welcome, welcome, one and all. I'm Brent Holland. Welcome to Night Fright. Our guest tonight, Jim Moroney. Jim Moroney's on the phone live from Calgary, Alberta. He's got a great book out called The Extraterrestrial Answer Book, UFO Alien Abductions and the Coming ET Presence. I want to welcome you to the show for the very first time, Jim. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Brent. I'm excited to be on here.
Glad to have you, and it's so nice to be talking with a fellow Canadian. So often, well, it's so often, as you know, this type of content, there are a plethora of Canadian authors like yourself, plethora of Canadian filmmakers, plethora of Canadian content makers of this genre that just get glossed over for some reason here in our home country. You know, George Norrie's been on the show before, of course, from Coast to Coast, and he does a wonderful, wonderful job of getting this information out there to folks. But primarily most of his guests, as you know, and rightfully so, are from the States, although I know you have been a guest on his show yourself. What this show, Night Fright, tries to do is bring Canadians onto this show and give them the forum to talk about their work. And I think it's an essential part of our Canadian mosaic to get this information out there. So let's dive in right away, shall we, folks? Folks, our guest tonight, Jim Moroney, The Extraterrestrial Answer Book, UFO Aliens, Abductions, and the Coming ET Presence. And that's where I want to begin, the Coming ET Presence. What do you see in our future, Jim?
Well, what I see in our future is certainly the extraterrestrials that are currently here visiting us. We'll call it that. It's more of an intervention than it's...
Can I interrupt you right there? They're currently
Absolutely.
here already?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's go there.
There's no doubt in my mind, and that's because it's not so much what I've read, because there is a ton of material on this stuff. Most of it's actually not very accurate, unfortunately, but there is a ton of material on this stuff, at least supporting the hypothesis that the phenomenon is actually real. The bigger question that is rolling around in everybody's mind, I think, is exactly what are they doing, why are they here? Back in 1987, I actually had an encounter experience which completely changed my view on the subject of extraterrestrials and UFOs, obviously. And that encounter experience occurred actually in Winnipeg. It actually occurred in Canada. And it was really difficult for me, I think, to kind of get my head around the experience itself and what it meant in a just not just from a personal point of view, obviously, and then things that I have to deal with on a personal level, but really what's happening on a global sense. And why I decided to write the book was not really about me in any sense, but really to reflect about what this means for all of us.
Fair enough. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for you and our children, the future generations of Canada and the globe, as you just said?
Yeah. Well, what's happening right now, what we're dealing with is a phenomenon that can best be described and understood in the sense of an intervention. The whole idea of contact has to be completely dismissed. You just throw that out the window. Don't even worry about that. What we need to really consider is that we're dealing with an intervention, and interventions themselves even though there's a sense of compassion and love to it, there's always a sense of force to it. And this is really essentially what we're dealing with right now. What these beings are trying to do, we don't fully understand it, even after the many years that I've spent researching the subject and even from my own experiences. We don't have a complete understanding of it, but it seems to me, and it seems that the evidence is clearly pointing that what we're dealing with is some kind of a relationship that's going to unfold here in the next few years, certainly within my lifetime. But the extent of that relationship and how that relationship is going to evolve, it probably might take more than one generation to actually occur. But they're here because they perceive that there's a crisis or a turning point in human evolutionary development, I'll call it, for lack of a better term. And without some kind of intervention, they feel that we probably wouldn't be able to make it over the next 20 or 30 years.
You say relationships. Do you think that perhaps, going back to Zecharia Sitchin's thesis, and folks, Zecharia Sitchin is a researcher who believes that we are indeed the offspring, if you will, or the genetic manipulations of extraterrestrials. Do you believe in that theory as well? Perhaps they are our parents, so to speak?
No, Brent, I don't really subscribe to that particular theory. Really, traditionally, my background's actually been fairly conservative, even though in my studies and stuff like that, and yet I have a viewpoint I would consider to be somewhat different than that's traditionally, broadcasted on the whole UFO area and the UFO phenomenon. But I really subscribe to the idea that these beings are certainly they consider themselves not separate from us in that sense. It's not a biological thing, but they consider ourselves as, I guess, co-creators or of the universe in some way. And in other words, there's some kind of link that they actually feel that they have with us, but I don't think it's biological.
You're listening to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio. The time is now. And now your host, Brent Holland.
Okay, folks, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Jim Moroney tonight. Forgive me for that. The Extraterrestrial Answer Book is his book. He's the author of UFOs, Alien Abductions, and the Coming ET Presence, www.nightfrightshow.com. As always, click on that book cover. We'll take you right to a place where you can order it online. I've got a plethora of questions for you now, Jim, if you don't mind.
Not at all. I can imagine. I kind of opened up a can of worms there, didn't I?
Sure did. And, as you say, your book's called The Answer Book, The Extraterrestrial Answer Book. Stan Friedman, folks, was on the show several weeks ago, and, of course, he's the father of Roswell, also a Canadian. So there's a triple Canadian connection there. Fabulous show. He was talking about Roswell, and of course, Canada has its own Roswell and Shag Harbor. He said there was three things that brought the aliens to come and visit us, so to speak. And it all ties in again to 1947. What was happening in New Mexico at the time was nuclear weapons. We were working on missiles to get into outer space, and of course our mindset is very aggressive, very warlike mindset. Do you agree with that?
Completely, 100%. I mean, Stanton and I are definitely on the same page in that way. And you know, when you consider Canada itself, there's so many great people in Canada for the size of the country that we have that have contributed an immense amount of information and understanding on the UFO phenomena, actually quite out of proportion to the size of our nation. And Stanton certainly has been one of those really stout figures with respect to his analysis and his criteria that he's used to establish to assess what's happening in the phenomenon. So I completely agree that these beings are here because of the 1947 and the discovery of nuclear weapons. Even just recently, in fact, in the news, there was the press club out of New York, and they had quite a number of leading military people coming forward, swearing affidavits, legal affidavits, swearing affidavits that UFOs were in fact tampering with their nuclear arsenals and their nuclear weapon systems. So you can see it doesn't take really a rocket scientist in that sense to have a real good understanding about what's actually happening with the phenomenon from what we understand.
In your book, Jim, were you able to ascertain where the hot spots are in Canada? Is there more activity, say, in Calgary, Alberta, as opposed to where I am in Sudbury, or perhaps where Stanton is in New Brunswick?
Yeah, it seems to me, honestly, that the reporting systems that we have are not, frankly, all that sophisticated. So we really have a loose-knit organization, even though it's relatively well-run compared to other countries, that collates this information and reports on UFO sightings. So, to make a long story short, we only really record about 10% of all UFO sightings. And we know this because we've done a number of scientific surveys and research about where people report sightings to, and even if they report them at all. And it's quite astounding, actually, I think, to know that we're only dealing with a small percentage of the actual report or sightings that people actually see. Now, given that, what we have found is that typically when the skies are clear, like the evening that you were referring to tonight in your area, you actually, and it's warm out, we tend to see some increases, and I think that's because typically the people are just outside more often, But again, when the skies are clear and people are outside walking around, it's a tendency that we do see these reports coming in. But I must say, it's not just nighttime. Also, we do have really good video footage, actually, of some daytime images.
I'd like to go back now, if you don't mind, Jim, and I'm just going to tell folks who we're speaking with. Folks, if you're just joining us tonight, settle in, relax, because we've just begun a journey tonight that I think you're going to enjoy for the next hour or so. We're talking with Jim Moroney. He's on the phone live from Calgary, Alberta. He's got a new book out called The Extraterrestrial Answer Book, UFO, Alien Abductions, and the Coming ET Presence. And I'm going to go back to the ET presence later on in the show as well, just to let you know. Easy way to get it, as always, www.nightfrightshow.com. Click on the book cover and you can order it right online. But I want to go back to your own experience right now, Jim, the one you had in 1987. Were you a believer or non-believer, a skeptic, before the encounter?
I believed that life existed in the universe, and I remember hearing a story about Betty and Barney Hill. It just seemed to be an interesting story, but I didn't give it much thought. I thought, okay, maybe there's extraterrestrials out there, maybe some UFO reports that I heard sounded maybe there was something to it, but I thought, the universe is so large, what do we really know? So I put it on the